Good old Nebuchadnezzar, a very old archer commander who is still probably pretty decent on the open field. Not absolute meta, but let's just put it out there. He's not absolute garbage. And in today's video, I'll be remaking my Nebuchadnezzar in-depth guide to help you decide if you should invest in him or if there are better options, and if he is even still a good commander at all. So if you want to see a full breakdown of Nebuchadnezzar in depth, his pairs, his skills, his talents, his open field potential, and if he's even a good investment, you want to stick around till the end of the video. Now let's start off as always with these videos by going over the commander's kit, and we should start off by noting that Nebuchadnezzar is a rally commander. He's actually built for rallying. A lot of people don't know that. I know obviously if you've read his skills in depth you would know, but most people see him used on the open field, at least when he was in the meta. But he has the conquering tree, he has a rallying skill, he is meant to be a rally commander. So I'll assess him on both the open field and also in a rally. But let's just go over his skills. First of all, we have his active skill, and I mean, you couldn't get an active skill more basic than Nebu's. It is a 5-target AoE with 1,500 damage to each target fan-shaped area. Each target takes 15% less damage. That is perfectly normal. This is the most basic active skill you'll ever get, and it's rubbish in the current meta. I mean, I'm just going to put it out there, it's garbage. There's much better commanders with better 5-target AoEs. You've got YSG, who's actually got more damage and it's in a circle. You've got Zhulang, who's got more damage and it's in a circle. You've got a Shirbanipal, who I'll talk about later, but he pretty much just robs Nebu. And you've also got Liu Cho, who's just got the same damage in a fan-shaped area. Actually, more damage. It's 750 more, something like that. I mean, it's just not even close. His damage isn't matter anymore. It just isn't. It's just not very good. But Nebu's second skill is still pretty good in the current meta. 30% archer defense and 15% march speed is really nice. It's permanent stats. It's 45% of stats. 15% march speed is up there with the best in the game for most archer commanders. I mean, there are some like Edward of Woodstock with 30%, but they don't count. They're very old. Nebu, in terms of more meta and newer commanders, is at that level where it is a 15% march speed bonus, and that's really good. Herman Prime has it, he's amazing. Nebu has it, it's amazing. Even Cyrus has a 15% march speed bonus, it's amazing. Henry has 20%, it's much better than amazing. So, Nebuchadnezzar is really built on just a few things. He's got this really high damage factor active skill, he's got really potent defense and march speed, and his other 2 and 3 skills aren't very amazing. We'll go over them soon, but we should note here that this second skill has a lot of value in KVKs where you can steal it from him. If he's available in a Heroic Anthem KVK, sometimes you will see him in a Bastion. I've never personally seen it, but I'm pretty sure you can see him in there. You can steal his skill and put it onto any archer commander. That second skill is going to pretty much boost any commander to the next level, especially Zhulang. Zhulang is going to really benefit from Nebuchadnezzar's second skill, because the 2 things that Zuj is missing is that he is missing any defense, he's got none in his kit, and he's missing march speed because he's also got none of that. So stealing Nebu's second skill and putting that onto your Zuj is an amazing idea for any KVK that it's available, even in a KVK like Siege of Orleans. His third skill is mainly built for rallying. If he's leading a rallied army, he deals 30% more counterattack, which makes him really anti-swarm. And whenever he's hit with a basic attack, 10% chance to deal direct damage of 800 to the attacker and reduce their march speed by 15% for 3 seconds. It has a cooldown of 5 seconds, so you'll be able to get this off really a lot as a rally. That anti-swarm with the counterattack is amazing. The direct damage to whoever's hitting you is also really good, and it's going to give him, once again, even more anti-swarm. He even still is nowadays a pretty decent anti-swarm rally with some of the other commander pairings that we will talk about, but it does make him pretty strong as an anti-swarm rally. And once again, in a KVK, if you can steal this like Siege of Orleans and put it onto your rallying commanders, it's an amazing skill to have, and it's one of the best rally skills in the game, even in this current meta. There's really nothing that comes as close to this in terms of the anti-swarm that this one skill can give you. Nebuchadnezzar's third skill here, this allows him to deal 15% more all damage, which is actually really nice. And whenever he launches a basic attack, 10% chance to reduce their rage by 100, and the cooldown has a 3-second cooldown. This is a decent skill. It's not the most necessary in his kit, but 15% all damage is nice, and the rage reduction, it's one of the only archer commanders besides like I'm pretty sure a Manatore, who actually has a rage reduction. So there's only 2 archer commanders in the whole entire like game at the moment who have it, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not missing anyone, which I don't think I am. And that does mean Nebu is very decent in terms of his strength because he's got that rage reduction. But keep in mind that there are better ways to get rage reductions now. There are commanders who just do it better, and there's the new William commander releasing soon who has a rage reduction inside of their talent tree. So Nebuchadnezzar's rage reduction isn't as good as it used to be, but once again, if you can get this skill and put it onto one of your marches, if you do have it maxed out, it is pretty good in those Siege of Orleans KVKs or Heroic Anthem or wherever you may be able to use it. Nebuchadnezzar's final skill here, this is his expertise, and all it really does is it allows him to deal 500 damage extra as a single target damage to whoever he's actually targeting. So this can bring his skill right here, if there is no one being hit by AoE, to 2000. Now that isn't meta damage factor at all by any means, even in the current meta, but it was very good back in the day. But nowadays, that's not very good. 2000 damage factor, it's average, and once again, there are commanders who just do it better. Also, with Nebuchadnezzar, he's a commander that is kind of in a weird situation. You can either go like 5-5-1-1 on him, and that's not going to be very good nowadays, it's just too underpowered. You could go and try and get lucky 5-5-1-5 on his skills. That's going to be decent nowadays, but once again, it's kind of underpowered. So he's kind of in a situation where it's expertise Nebu or just don't use him. Nebu is in that situation where it's like, he's definitely getting very outdated nowadays compared to a lot of the other commanders. And once we see the next generation of archers, I think he's going to be around 4 or 5 generations behind the current meta. That's a very, very long time. That's a lot of archer commanders that have released after him. And that means he's pretty much in the situation where if you do actually want to run him on the open field, he is kind of in an expertise or go home situation. Just because without that expertise, 500 damage factor, normally it isn't the biggest deal. It definitely wasn't back in the day when he first released. But nowadays, he even needs that to be somewhat competitive. So Nebu is in a situation where it's expertise or nothing. There is really no in between if you even do want to consider running him on the open field, which in my opinion isn't the best idea for most players. There are just much better commanders who are better investments, and we will talk about that a little bit later. Now, in terms of Nebuchadnezzar's talent trees, this is the tree I personally ran on him. Keep in mind, I was running like a Nebu Cyrus at the time, and that's a really weird build. I had latent power at the time as well. I've just removed it because I was testing him with something else. But normally this was the build that I would be running if my Nebu was with, let's say, YSG or with a commander that wasn't as meta. And that was the march I was running at the time. But for most people, if you're running Nebu, you're going to be running him with Zulang, and this is the tree that you would be running. I recommend Naked Rage. I know it's weird for a commander who's not very tanky, but you've got 2 5-target AoE commanders. You're going to usually be dealing more skill damage than you will be taking, so I find that it is worth it. If you do find you're getting attacked and getting very squishy, you can just drop this talent and put the points elsewhere, for example, just into some of the attack stats here, and that isn't a very bad idea. I then went down and I picked up Conquering. It's one of my favorite talents in the game. Taking 9% less counterattack is really, really good, and I pretty much always get it from the Conquering tree. Getting the Buckler Shield, amazing talent, wouldn't really recommend anything else. And I went all in on Feral Nature. The reason I did that is because in the open field, fast, punchy battles are pretty much everywhere, and you need the fast rage cycle to really be anywhere near meta competitive. So going for Feral Nature is a must, and the same thing in my opinion with Razor Sharp. That extra 9 rage per turn might not seem like a lot, but sometimes it is just that small amount of rage you need to tick over into your active skill 1 turn earlier, and possibly that can allow you to get a whole extra active skill off. This is a bit more situational, but once again, I feel it is worth the 4 talent points, because otherwise you're going to have like 2 in here, and then maybe you get like 1% more normal damage, or you get 2% more attack, but honestly it isn't the biggest deal. So I prefer Razor Sharp over pretty much all the other talents that you would have access to. And then I went for Venomous Sting because dealing 8% more skill damage on an AoE commander is just really, really good. So now that we've looked at Nebuchadnezzar's talent trees and his best skills, what do I think about his best pairings? That is a question I do kind of receive even nowadays. And I mean, Nebu's best pairing, it's Yulang. I mean, there's no one else that's even close, but that's of course because Yulang is just absolutely meta. There is no one even near Yulang's strength for the archers. Maybe Herman Prime could be close, but they're not really at the same tier, and Herman with Nebu isn't the most amazing. So Yulang with Nebu is the most meta march that you can be running, and it is going to be his best pairing. Even nowadays, this is actually still pretty decent, but keep in mind you'll have to run Nebu as the primary, and that is always going to be a bit dangerous considering how squishy he is, and it does mean that in the current meta, he gets targeted a lot compared to a lot of the other archer commanders. If you see a Nebu, most people just gun straight for him because of how easy he is to just kill. He's very easy to take out, he's much older than all the new commanders, and he usually means there's a good trade for him. So he gets targeted a lot, and that means your Zooge can get killed off very quickly, and he's an amazing commander to try and keep alive as long as possible. So Zulang with Nebu, it's one of the better marches you can run in terms of Nebu's best pairings, but it just isn't in the same strength as it used to be. Another pairing with Nebu is YSG, but once again, this has really fallen out of the meta. It just isn't as good, but if you wanted to run it, you can also run it, and this would be good for around 4 or 5 marches. Nebu isn't really going to be used unless you're in 4 or 5 archer marches, and most people just aren't doing that. So Nebu, his best pairings are really going to be Zooge or YSG, maybe a Shobani Pal, maybe a Herman Prime, but they're big maybes. Boudica Prime can work as a primary with Nebu as a secondary, and that's actually not the worst march. You get a little bit of tankiness with the defense here, you get a very decent amount of march speed, 10% on Boudica, 15% on Nebuchadnezzar, and you get a good AoE with some okay all damage. It is actually a decent march combination, Boudica with Nebu, but as you will notice once we talk about his investment potential, there are other commanders who do better than him. So Nebu, in terms of his best open field pairings, it's probably Zulang or YSG as ones that you could even run, and really if you're looking for 5 or so marches, it's most likely going to be actually YSG. There is also an argument for Nebu with Tamiris, but I don't know why people do recommend this march. In my opinion, it's rubbish, and it makes no sense, especially with the release of Herman Prime. Why on earth would you run a Nebu Tommy? Because it's just going to remove your poison stacks and make your Herman much weaker. There is really no point in doing that, and I definitely recommend that people do not run Nebu Tamiris. It is a very bad idea. In terms of Nebu's best rally pairings, I mean, it goes to really Henry. You don't run Nebuchadnezzar with anyone else. It's only Nebu with Henry, and it's just an anti-swarm rally. You wouldn't run a Henry Nebu if you're not running anti-swarm. You can run either one as the primary. I think they both work. I prefer Henry just because support trees better in longer situations, and also because you're going to have that skill damage reduction, hopefully on your first active skill if you can outrage your opponents, and that's very possible with Nebu and his rage reduction. So there is a good amount of synergy there. Nebu hopefully reduces the target rage, allows Henry to get that skill damage reduction off, and that allows him to take a lot less damage. That is really the moral of it. And if you're not up against a Gorgo Garrison especially, it can be a fairly decent rally. So this rally is okay for anti-swarm, otherwise I wouldn't really be running it. Oddly enough, I don't really see many Nebu or Shobani Pal rallies. I think it could maybe work, but it isn't the best rally I've seen. And Nebu with Zulang as a rally just is not a thing. It's just way too outdated. Maybe 2 years ago it could have been a thing, but nowadays, or like a year and a half ago, but nowadays it just isn't. So it's really only Nebu with Henry as your main rally pairing. So now the final question to answer in today's guide is, should you invest in Nebuchadnezzar? Is he a commander that is strong enough in the current meta to even warrant an investment of even a few gold heads? And just putting it straight out, nah, he's just not worth it. There's much better options out there. I could list off the top of my head probably like 7 or 8 archer commanders who would be better. I can actually do it right now. Henry, Zulang, Boudica, Herman Prime, Ashobani Pal, YSG. That's 6 commanders who are just better investments than Nebu, because they are either stronger, they've got more long-term value, they're newer, really all of the above. And another thing that really hinders Nebuchadnezzar is Ashobani Pal. Ashobani Pal is literally Nebuchadnezzar reskinned. They have the same civilization background. They are both 5 target AoEs, 1,500 damage, except Nebuchadnezzar's expertise, his expertise skill, which costs 690 gold heads, is put onto a Ashobani Pal's active skill for free, and it's even better. So a Ashobani Pal is pretty much just like a get screwed at Nebuchadnezzar. I'm better in every single way. So there's really no point at all in running a Nebu when you could just go and get a Ashobani Pal from the same mightiest governor and run him instead. So a Ashobani Pal is a much better choice than Nebu. He works with the same commanders. He is just a better rally. He is just better on the open field, and he is much more meta. There's a reason I expertised him, and I didn't expertise Nebu. It's just because Ashobani Pal, stronger than Nebu, very downright and simple. So when you look at archer commanders, Nebu is kind of useless when there is a Nebu 2.0 who is literally just better. So it's really like you could get the newer version, the stronger version, or you could get the rubbish version who is much older. So Nebu, not a good investment in the current meta. You can maybe get away with running him for 4 or 5 marches, and I think it'd be reasonable for 4 or 5 archer marches, but otherwise he's not your go-to. For your top 3 archer marches, like I said, there are 6 better commanders you can easily run something like a Henry YSG, Boudica, Sherbani Pal, who is the Nebu 2.0, and then Zulang Hermit. And then you can maybe move to Form Archers, where you pick up Nebu and you put him with one of these other rubbish archer commanders who are kind of outdated. Maybe you switch it up and you do Boudica, Artemisia. You can do stuff like that and then end up with a Nebu YSG in the end. But it is just a really, really scuffy march. It doesn't work as well, and it just isn't your go-to unless, like I said, you're running 4 to 5 archer marches, when you can maybe get away with a Nebu YSG and running like a Henry Sherbani Pal and Boudica Artemisia. Maybe at that point it's worth it, but otherwise Nebu just isn't worth your time, and I don't recommend running 4 or 5 archer marches pretty much for any players. So if you're running him, I don't know what you're doing, but I just wouldn't recommend investing in Nebu. Not in the current meta, unless he gets an OP Museum Relic, which I highly doubt, and unless he gets some type of OP buff, once again, which I highly doubt. So Nebuchadnezzar, not a very good investment. I don't see why he would ever be a good investment again, just because a Sherwani Pal exists who is pretty much Nebu but better in almost every single way. So Nebuchadnezzar, not going to get the investment stamp of approval. I recommend going for any other archer commander that is within my top 6, who are just going to be better than Nebu, who is probably 7th. So now that I've finished berating Nebuchadnezzar as a commander and saying he's complete garbage, if you did enjoy today's in-depth guide for Nebuchadnezzar and his position in the current meta and what I really think of him, please do consider subscribing to the channel. I try to push out an archer guide for every single commander. I'm remaking all my old guides, which are really just bad quality, and trying to make them a little bit more professional and a little bit more up-to-date. So if you're interested in seeing archer guides for every single commander, there is a playlist I might put at the end of the video if I remember, and it has got all the guides I've updated for pretty much all the main meta commanders. So if you're interested in archer guides for pretty much every archer commander, you want top quality archer content, my channel is the best to subscribe to. So please do consider subscribing. It helps support me and it's very much appreciated. Now I just want to say I thank you all for watching and I hope to see you in the next one.